Test, test. Thank you all for patiently waiting. We're going to get started shortly. Just want to make that announcement one more time. If you don't mind, please silence your cell phones. And then towards the end, if the governor does take questions, that part is for the media only, so no standing up and shouting out any questions. Thank you.
Well, great to see everybody. Great to be back in Gainesville. We started in Fort Lauderdale. Beautiful sunny day there. Not as much here. So we were a little late getting in with the weather, but we're happy to be here for today's announcement. And we're also looking forward to the football season coming up. The Gators got, I think they have a couple games to start that may be on the easy side, but it gets pretty doggone tough after that. A very, very difficult schedule. I know we're gonna have Arch Manning coming to Gainesville with Texas, which will be good, and I know there'll be a lot of other good games. So I think the way the season ended last year was positive. I think that they've got an opportunity to do well. So we'll see what happens. That's the one. Florida, we're like #1, and I just got ranked #1 for religious liberty. We're #1 in economy 3 years in a row by CNBC. We've been #1 in higher education for many years, academic. We've been #1 in all these different things. But we're not #1 in college football anymore, and so, man, it would be great to be able to get back there. So I'm rooting for them. I want to see, and, I've got 3 young kids who have grown up in Tallahassee, and they've migrated to the Knolls. And so I try to tell them, I'm like, listen, I'm governor of all the people. So I was like, because I was at the championship game for the basketball team, and I'm like, you got to root. I was like, you can't, because we thought it was going to be Duke versus Florida in the championship. I was like, son, Madison, Mason, you cannot root for Duke against the Florida team. I don't care how much you like the Florida State. But I will tell you, as parents, we've not steered them. In fact, last year, start of the season, the Miami game in Gainesville, my girls were wearing, Florida cheerleading attire. My son was wearing a Tebow jersey. They go to the swamp. We're like, maybe they'll like it. And, they just grew up in Tallahassee. So it is what it is with that. But we've been equal opportunity. But we are looking forward to it. I think it's going to be interesting. We've got a lot of great opportunities. We're also, excited to be able to be here with our new Chief Financial Officer for the state of Florida, Blaise Ngoli, or there he is right there. So Blaise is, he was a state senator over north of Tampa Bay, and has been a huge warrior on all the issues that the voters that elected us have wanted to tackle. Now as the Chief Financial Officer, he's going to be tackling a number of issues, helping us with property tax relief, but also using the authority of the CFO's office to conduct audits and oversight of the spending of local governments in both the county and state level. And it's really important. And so the state of Florida, at the beginning of the year, partially to build off what was being done with President Trump and Elon Musk with the DOGE, we said we want to be doing that in Florida. And now, look, we went into it. Some people say you guys have been doing this for many years, and it's true. I mean, I think if you look at what we've done, over the last 6+ years, if you take all the debt that Florida's accumulated over its 180-year history, just since I've been governor, we're close to retiring almost 50% of that in just this period of time, and we're going to do more over the next year or two, which is great. If you look at the number of state government workers per capita in Florida, we're the lowest in the entire country. If you look at the amount of money the state of Florida spends per capita, we're the second lowest in the country. If you compare Florida to the state that's closest to us in population, New York, we've got like 3 million, maybe even 4 million more people more residents than New York State does, and yet their budget is twice as large as Florida's state budget. New York City's budget is more than the state of Florida. They have 8 million people. And if this guy gets elected mayor up there and he starts running the grocery stores, they're going to end up in a bigger hole than they are now. And you can see that. How he could get elected, actually, he probably could get elected in Gainesville, but not not many other parts of Florida could he possibly get elected. But if he does get elected there, I mean, you are going to see people starting to flee New York. I mean, it's been happening. De Blasio, I was governor. I became governor in the middle of de Blasio, and especially how they handled COVID and the BLM riots. You know, people had enough, but everyone's got their threshold, and I think this guy's threshold, people are going to reach their threshold. And one of the things we're going to be doing, you know, in Florida, we've done law enforcement recruitment bonuses. So when we bring in people or new recruits from within the state, they get a $5,000 signing bonus. Part of it, we want to promote law enforcement as a noble profession, but we also understood you've got a lot of these cops are treated poorly in some of these jurisdictions. So you got a guy that could get elected mayor that thinks the NYPD should be abolished. You know, I don't know. I would not want to put on the uniform and risk my life in that circumstance with a mayor that clearly doesn't have your back. So I think you're going to see a lot of law enforcement want to relocate out of there. And I guarantee you, they'll go different places, but I guarantee you the #1 landing spot will be the state of Florida, because we're a law and order state. That's just the way it works. So the budget, I mean, way different. Everything we've been doing is great, but at the same time, it's like, and the budget I just signed for this fiscal year, even though we increased teacher salaries, even though we increased infrastructure, even though we did historic investments in Everglades and natural resources, all these things, it still spends less year over year than the previous year's budget. And that previous year's budget spent less year over year than the year before that. How many other states are reducing spending over a 3-year period like that? I don't think any of them are, but certainly not very many. So we've really led the way. We're proud of that, but you can always do better. So what we did, and our agencies are always reviewing these contracts as a matter of course. This isn't anything new for us, but they're using artificial intelligence and all these other things. So we're employing those tools. We have a DOGE entity now in the state government. I did an executive order. Part of we also needed to do scrutiny is the universities, because you know universities get a lot of money, and on the one hand, I know we've done a decent job because tuition is the same today as it was when I became governor. So in-state tuition, especially if you're good enough to get into UF now, you probably are going to get bright futures anyways. That's 100%, 75% tuition depending. So we've done a good job of holding the line on tuition, but you know the legislature appropriates money, and we want to make sure that's it. So those DOGE efforts have been going on now for several months. But we also understood state and local government, because you know people are coming to me, you know, wanting property tax relief, and I'm supportive of that. I think we need to do it, but that property tax revenue is local revenue. It's imposed by local governments, and it's used for local things. We're not getting property tax revenue at the state of Florida. And I'll talk about, like, we maxed out our rainy day fund. So from the time I became governor till now, we've more than tripled the state's rainy day fund. You never know what's going to happen. You have a recession, all this other stuff. Florida's not going to be immune to that if that happens nationwide. And so and some people are like, well, why do you put money in the rainy day, reduce property tax? That's not property tax revenue. The property tax revenue is going for local. So you have places where you've seen major bloat in the budgets. So we were just down in Broward County to announce an audit of the county government there, because they've had almost no population increase in the last 4 or 5 years, but they've had increase in property tax, 45% more they're taking in with this revenue. And I'm just thinking to myself, okay, well, you know, it's not because of population growth. And so where is that money going? Where's the spending? So if you want to do property tax relief, part of what you have to do is identify the way that the areas that impose those taxes to begin with, those areas of government, how are they spending the money? So we wanted to lean in on applying these DOGE efforts to local governments. Now, I have some authority under the Constitution to request information. The CFO, and Blaze is now using this, has authority. Any entity that's receiving state funding can do audits. But we wanted to make sure that we had the ability to come in and actually do the real thorough inspections like they've done, at the federal level. And so the legislature did include this year, at our request, authority to do the DOGing of local governments. And that's municipalities, counties, even entities within there. Like we were down there talking about like the Broward Sheriff's Department. Yeah, that's grist for the mill. So that has happened. And so I'm pleased to announce that today. But before we even got that, we sent information to a lot of to all the counties and the cities saying, hey, comply with what we're trying to do with DOGE, and many of them didn't. Some did, many of them didn't. And so we're now utilizing this new authority to roll out these DOGE efforts vis-a-vis city and county governments across the state of Florida. So this morning we announced Broward County would be the first county that would do, and this will be, starting at the end of July, you'll have the DOGE teams will show up to these areas, review data systems, review the physical premises, review the personnel records of county and cities, specifically ones that have kind of come under the microscope. So this is much different than me just sending a letter saying, hey, what did you spend that on? These are going to be real auditors that are going to be on the ground doing this. And again, we have the authority now to be able to access this information. And we are going to start with some of the jurisdictions. And so part of the reason we're here today, we're in Broward this morning to announce we are going to include in the first round of DOGE audits a thorough review of the practices of the city of Gainesville here in Alaska County. Over the last 5 years, taxpayers in Gainesville have watched as the city government has increased burdens on property owners, over $30 million in additional ad valorem tax collections, which represents an increase of almost 86% since 2020. This has been part of increased spending that has seen Gainesville's operating budget expand by over $90 million a year. So this is, if you just divide by the residents, much less property owners, $600 per resident in additional taxes that have been applied. And of course, what has the city done with the money? They have DEI, they have Green New Deal, they have things that, quite frankly, a lot of taxpayers don't want to pay more property taxes to be able to fund. And so the goal of this review is to identify these practices, seek justification for why you've seen the growth in the taxes. I know they just raised the tax the other day. I saw a report on that. And I'm just thinking to myself, we should be, it's one thing for the state of Florida to do what we've done, and we're proud of that. But if you're a Floridian, whether it's city or county government, taxpayers should be put first. Taxpayers should be respected. And that's what we're trying to do here. So we will work with our CFO, Blaze Angolia, to conduct these visits. Blaze has already assured me that his team at the CFO's office is standing by and ready to work. And here's the thing. This is not optional cooperation. This has been passed by the Florida legislature, signed into law by me as governor. There's also constitutional authority that helps inform this, and the CFO also has authority to be able to inform this. And so we believe that taxpayers have wanted to see this done. This will then roll into our effort to be able to do the property tax relief on the ballot in 2026. And I think the reason is people who oppose property tax relief will say, well, we need schools and fire and police. Of course we do. But what about all this other spending that's not there? What about some of the, we were just down in Broward, and their county administrator makes almost $500,000 a year. Now, look, so is that what you want as a taxpayer? So these things need scrutiny, and because I really believe you can do the things at the local level we all agree on, education, first responders, all that. and still be able to provide meaningful property tax relief, but not if the spending is not kept in check on these other items. So you're going to see that. I think it's going to be really, really instructive. I want to thank the folks that helped work with us to get this into law. Now, there are ramifications for noncompliance, and there's a variety of tools that we'll have at our disposal. And if we need to do that, we will do that. But I'm excited. We're going to be rolling out more jurisdictions over the next 2 weeks. So expect to see other cities and other counties from various parts of the state of Florida. I mean, we're down in Broward, like you're just doing, Broward, Southeast Florida. I mean, they acted like Southeast Florida, is like, like this Democrat area. Like, I won Miami-Dade and Palm Beach County, by the way. So it's not. Now, Broward is a bird of a different feather, but that's okay. It is what it is. So it's not. We're really looking at where have we received a lot of interest in examining who has not been fully compliant with the requests that have been made. But you will see counties in variety parts of the state. You'll see different political compositions. It's going to be, I think, an interesting but meaningful diversity across the state from both the county and municipal level. And it could also be other entities that are affiliated with a specific county. We mentioned Broward Sheriff's Department. That would be something that can obviously be looked at. So I'm excited to unleash our new Chief Financial Officer, Blaise Ngolia, on this. The thing about it is, so we had this vacancy because our past CFO got elected to Congress in the 1st District of Florida. And so, created this vacancy, and people are like, what about this? What about this guy? What about that? And the thing about it for me is, I want somebody in there that's going to fight for the people of the state, for taxpayers, for consumers. And I think that's what everybody wants for that. So how do you know someone's going to do that? For me, the way to know is to see do they have a record of actually doing that in the offices they've already held. Because if they've been in office and just been very passive and meek and not willing to get out there and run towards the fire, they're not all of a sudden going to grow a spine of steel in a new office and start really leading. That's just not the way it works. And so we've had different, on issue after issue, Blaise has fought for you and has delivered for you. Election integrity, all the stuff we've done in Florida to ban ballot harvesting, clean up the voter rolls, election crimes unit to prosecute illegal voting. Leading the nation and all that, he wrote every one of those bills and pushed them through the legislature. If you look at Second Amendment rights, he refused to buckle when they were restricting Second Amendment rights back before I became governor. He's always stood for Second Amendment. You look at illegal immigration, everything we've done, banning sanctuary cities, doing the things to hold the localities accountable, no IDs, all the stuff we've done to lead the nation there. Blaise was the one that was really pushing that. And then we had a skirmish with the Speaker of the House and some of the legislators earlier this year about I wanted us doing immigration to help the Trump administration increase deportations. They rejected initially what I said, and they passed a bill that would have made Florida de facto sanctuary state. Blaise stood with you and stood against the Speaker of the House and other leaders to do the right thing. So, and then on fiscal, he's been a fiscal hawk for even when he was just a businessman, not even elected. He was focusing on waste and local government in Hernando County. So that record is very, very strong. And then even, we just had the news last week about the redistricting maps that we did for Congress in 22 were upheld by the Florida Supreme Court. And people may not remember, we have big Republican majorities, but they passed a map that was a bad map. And I said, I'm going to veto it if you pass it, and they passed it, so I vetoed it. And then we ended up calling a special session, and then we have a much better map that was just approved as fully constitutional and compliant with the law. Blaise was the whole time standing for you and standing for what was right on that. So when I see that you have a record of actually doing what you said you're going to do, that is the most meaningful indicator to me. And I'm sorry, I watched these guys campaign not only here but around the country. They all say the same things when they want your vote, especially in a Republican primary. But then once it comes time to get into office, the number of them who actually deliver on what they say is honestly in Republican few and far between, unfortunately. And so when you have somebody that's not only talk the talk but walk the walk and delivered results, that's the best indicator that you're going to see meaningful leadership and action in this new office. And so I think you're going to find in short order that he's a guy that's going to fight for you. He's a guy that really, really puts the taxpayers of this state and the consumers of this state first. And that's exactly what we need as a CFO. So the floor is yours, my man.
Thank you, Governor. Governor, I want to thank you for leading on this issue and, as always, a lot of issues. This governor has taken a lot of issues over the years. Some instances where other governors, other states would shy away from the fight, he was a leader on this. You know, sometimes turning other states into doing what Florida has done because of Ron DeSantis' leadership. Right now, he's leading on property tax reform, trying to eliminate property taxes on homesteaded properties, and auditing and doging local governments, and that's why we're here today. But before we start, I just want to say it is great being in Gainesville, the home of the Florida Gators. So I gotta say this because the Gov and I talk sports all the time. The Gov is like, hey, you know, now that you're a statewide elected official, you have to sort of be, you know, even on all sides. Look, I'm a Tampa Bay Lightning fan. I was actually rooting for the Florida Panthers. I said, I may be CFO. I have to get used to rooting for the other side. Look, I grew up in New York City. Don't hold that against me. I escaped New York City to come here because of low taxes. But I root for the Tampa Bay Rays. I root for the Florida Marlins. Somebody said, hey, does that mean you're going to root for FSU? And I'm like, no, I am not. So then they said, well, what about the Miami Hurricanes? I'm like, do you want to start a fight? But I will tell you that I started off as an anti-wasteful spending activist when I was back in the mid-2000s. If we remember, back then we saw the increase in property taxes because we saw an increase in values and local governments, expanded government. We're seeing the same thing that's happening right now. Local government revenue coming in are expanding anywhere between like 60 to 120%. They're taking the extra tax revenue. They're spending it recklessly. We are seeing it. And I hate to say that you guys are living in a city where one of the worst offenders are, we believe. And what we're here to do is shine a light. You cannot have meaningful property tax reform unless you have meaningful spending reform. And the only way to do that is to let the citizens, the taxpayer, know exactly what your local governments are actually spending the money on. Because I'm going to tell you right now, there is going to be a tax question on the November 26th ballot, and it's going to ask you, do you want to either cut your property taxes or eliminate your property taxes on homestead exemption? So local governments are already positioning and saying that we can't do it. We have this, and we have to pay for. And I'm going to tell you right now that we are on a mission to prove that a lot of the stuff that they don't want to cut, they could cut. There's just not a willingness to cut. So the CFO's office, along with the governor's administration, DOGE Florida, we're going to start going in. We're going to start pulling all of these contracts. We're going to start looking at spending. We're looking at spending traits. And we are going to tell the voters, you guys, exactly what they're doing with your money so you can hold people accountable. What we're doing, you can clap, that's okay. Now notice, I didn't have a Jeb moment and say, please clap. I said, you can clap, that's okay. I gave, but what local governments need to understand is it's not their money, it's your money, the taxpayer money. And we all need to be better fiscal watchdogs for what they're spending on. Because I guarantee you, once the light is shown on some of this stuff, you're like, you are taxing me to do that? I have questions. Because that's where we're headed. So we cannot start off with this faulty assumption that the level of government and spending that they have right now is needed, because we know that it's not. So we're going to go in, we're going to show, we're going to work hard, we're going to do our due diligence, and we're going to show that you are spending too much money. You need to start cutting back. start cutting back now, or the voters are going to do that on the 26th ballot. When property values, we've seen property values go up over the past couple of years, right? Who should benefit from the rise in property values? You guys should, not government. But what we have seen time and time again is that government is benefiting from property taxes. Now, the governor will probably get up here after this and explain, because we both believe, and the governor has said this eloquently before, is that do you really own your home? Even if you have it free and clear, you're renting it from the government. So, Governor, the team at DOGE Florida, I look forward to working with you side by side to make sure that we're holding people accountable. I will tell you this. A new era of accountability is upon us in Florida. Thank you, Governor.
Yeah, so I think this will be very meaningful. I know there's a lot of taxpayers who wanted to see this in different parts of the state, and it will stretch in different parts of the state. But I also just wanted to commend, we did have a lot of local governments who voluntarily fully complied and were welcoming this. Not all of them, maybe not most of them, but there were some that have done. There was others, there was more of a division, but you did have some individual commissioners that wanted to work with our team, and so they've been doing that. But the reality is the law is the law now, so we are going to exercise the authority to make sure people are able to get answers. And I take questions in a minute, but I do, because Blaze was mentioning a little bit about the college sports, and I didn't really, I don't know if I've been back to Gainesville since the basketball championship, but of all the things I've done and been in person, we hosted the Super Bowl in Tampa in 2021, and I'm a Bucks fan like Blaze, and so watching them win the Super Bowl, it's kind of a big deal to be there and everything. But this was unique because it didn't look like they were going to win. And it was like not the greatest game. And then all of a sudden, it was like the last 2 minutes, things just started moving. Next thing you know, the buzzer goes off, and they're national champions. And so it was really neat to be able to see that. And I always tell people that the model for athletic program is what it was in Florida when you had the basketball team repeating, you had the Tebow game. I mean, you will never be able to find a place that can match that. And I even went to war with Grok about, because Florida is the only school that's won 3 basketball and 3 football. And before I put that out, I wanted to confirm that on Grok. And so Grok was just saying things that just weren't accurate. And he's like, well, there's this many football, this has maybe, and they didn't even mention Florida. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. I was like, they definitely have 3 in each. I was like, so what about football? I was like, well, and I'm like, well, didn't they win it? They won 1 under Spurrier, 2 under. Oh, yeah, they did win. You're right. And then I'm like, well, basketball, they just won it, 2 days ago. I was like, well, okay, yeah. So it just shows you this artificial intelligence. We're going to be rolling out, kind of an overall approach from the state of Florida in the coming months, because I think this AI is going to be a really big deal for our society. I think there's a lot of perils in AI. First of all, it's just like, are we functioning human beings who think for ourselves, or are we just going to rely on computers to do all of our thinking for you? It's one thing to have technology to enhance the human experience. It's one thing to try to have technology displace that. But then you also have the fact that relying on AI, reality is it is flawed. I mean, I don't care how good. There are certain things that they're just not doing. And I see that in all the different AI products. And so, but bottom line is, this is something I think is going to be really important for our society, our state, our country in the ensuing years. And the change is very rapid, that you can see big changes in society perhaps very quickly. I don't think that we want our society to just be turned over to tech overlords. I think that we have they were thinking about in Washington taking away the state's ability to have any type of laws regarding AI. And I'm just like, listen, I'm not saying I have something right now, but there may be things that we have to do to protect people from some of the negative effects of this technology. So, it's not something you can just put your head in the sand on, but it's also not something that you can just totally submit to and just let it run roughshod. I think there's some real perils there, and we're going to be working hard. But the fact that Grok did not know that the Gators had won 3 in each. I mean, to me, it's like that's if you have all this access to all this data, that would be a very easy thing to be able to do. So there's a lot of flaws in this, and I know it's gotten a lot better, but we cannot just relinquish our human reason and our willingness to think for ourselves in favor of some of these machines. Okay, do we have any questions? Well, I did an executive order at the beginning of the year to do state agency. So we do that as a matter of course anyways. So like these contracts, Elon's finding all these contracts federally he was doing. We do that as a matter of course. Well, we've done state that's different now because we saw how they were using artificial intelligence to kind of help that. So that is being used to help it. And I think that that's meaningful. And then the other thing we've done at the state level that I think was overdue was the DOGing of the universities, the state universities. So that's all ongoing. That is happening. And we're happy to do that. But I would also say that I went over the fiscal record in Florida. It's strong. It's really, really strong. I always want to do better. I'm not saying there aren't things. Bureaucracies are by nature inefficient, right? I mean, that's just the way it is. So you're always having to police that. But yes, we did the executive order. All our folks do. Now, all of our agencies have DOGE liaisons. We have Eric Soskin here, who's the head of our DOGE for the state. And that's been our primary focus through most of this calendar year up until more recently when we've been engaging local governments and then now have this new authority to do it. Yep. Now, look, I mean, the mayor, they can say what they want. It's fine. I mean, like, the reality is like, don't tell me that your city's run well. Show me, and you will have an opportunity to show how the city is run, and taxpayers will be able to get transparency in that. And so I don't think shouldn't be any problem with that. I mean, if you're proud of the way things are being run, then that'll be made very apparent to folks. And look, there's some areas that I'm convinced are problem areas, and maybe it turns out that they DOGE, and maybe they're doing better than what some people are led on to believe. But I do think you're going to see when you have that type of increase over a short period of time without a commensurate population increase, I mean, I do think you're going to end up flagging things that I think taxpayers are going to want to see. Well, we're going to roll out, so over these 2 weeks, we're going to roll out more in other parts of the state. I think part of the reason we did this, I think the one we had most persistent inquiries about Broward. And obviously, I've been involved in Broward County affairs, not really, I mean, kind of against my will. It's like I'm forced to do it, like supervisor of elections, the sheriff, we had to do a lot of stuff down there. I've removed school board members, all with just cause. I'd rather not have to do that. I'd rather them just do their jobs. But so we've been involved in there, and so we understood that there's issues. And then this was another city, Gainesville, where a lot of people were concerned. Obviously, with the recent tax, we thought we needed to do it, and was on the way back from Broward back to Tallahassee. I don't know if we're going to end up getting out of here with the weather, but we'll see what happens. But you expect to see more. I mean, you're going to see more counties in other parts of the state. You're going to see more municipalities, and it will span geography. I mean, I know that we've got stuff in Northeast Florida on tap. I know we've got some stuff in the Tampa Bay area, and I know we've got more in Southeast Florida as well. So buckle up. You're going to be able to see that unfold. And the thing is like, I mean, look, people have to make their decisions about how they run these things. I mean, I can tell you when I see things where, you've got, $250,000, $300,000 for like a city or a county employee, like, look, maybe that's justifiable. I can tell you the CFO Florida isn't making anywhere close that much. There's folks, throughout the state government who have major responsibilities who are not anywhere near that. And so, maybe it's justified, but I think a lot of people will probably look and say, okay, wait a minute, what's been the increase in some of that? What would it mean for taxpayers if we held the line there and not done that as much? And these are all very important questions. I think the thing that we want to get, though, is just to show that this idea that you should forever have to just pay increasing taxes because your home's going up, even though it's not a realized gain, that is not required to be able to fund the things we need to fund locally, like the first responders and the schools. You definitely can do it. Especially, I mean, look, for Florida residents in particular, like look, investors, snowbirds, commercial, that's a little bit different. I mean, philosophically, I would say, everything, but certainly for you as a Florida resident with your primary homesteaded residence, at what point do you own it, right? And don't tell me it can't be done, because it can be done. So we're working through all these things, but it's interesting when you crunch the numbers and look at, what revenue is getting from where across the state of Florida, that, if you look at property tax revenue, the majority of residential property tax revenue is from non-homestead property, which is weird because you'd think, the vast majority of homes are probably homesteaded in Florida. And I think it's because some of these are wealthier people, second homes. The tax value obviously goes up higher because they don't have the homestead protection. But that's the majority of the revenue there. And that's not even counting commercial. So if you talk about your primary residence, that's a distinct minority of the amount of revenue that comes into these city and county governments for property tax. A lot of people don't know that. They act like, oh, if you help a Florida homeowner, somehow there's not going to be. Actually, there's still going to be the vast majority of revenue be there. So we're looking through all this stuff. We're working with folks in the legislature, particularly in the Senate, about formulating what could go on the ballot and give people an opportunity to be able to vote themselves some really meaningful protection for their personal residence. And I'll tell you, if you did that, in addition to having no income tax, I mean, you're talking about the best place to live, work, raise a family, and retire, bar none at that point. All right. Well, best of luck. These guys are gonna get cracking on this, so you guys should be getting some information, hopefully, relatively soon. It doesn't happen overnight, but we understand that the time is of the essence. We've got the legislature coming in next year. They're gonna have to put the property tax on the ballot, so we want to get all this done. And I know I'll be back in town for one. I definitely think I want to go to the Texas game. We would always watch Archman, but we'll see. Maybe we'll come back before then. So God bless everyone. Thank you.